Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
On December 12th, Disney Plus invites you to go behind the scenes with Taylor Swift in an exclusive 6-episode docuseries.
I wanted to give something to the fans that they didn't expect.
The only thing left is to close the book.
The end of an era. And don't miss Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour, the final show, featuring for the first time the Tortured Poets Department. Streaming December 12th, only on Disney Plus.
Sports Social Podcast Network, the biggest voices in sport. Let's take a look at some of the lineup. The Anfield Wrap.
Liverpool are not equipped. That is a deliberate decision, and for me that is deeply unacceptable.
Football cliches.
Turns out that Rudy Voller was born son of Rachel and Derek Voller from Basildon and Hainault.
Tennis Unfiltered.
If Sinner and Alcaraz are turning up to tournaments and are bothered 99% of the time, one of them's going to win it.
All on Europe's biggest sport podcast network. Find your next favourite sport podcast. Search Sports Social Podcast Network and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Verified comparison at content.sport-social.co.uk/comparison.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to How We're That podcast. And after a week of stewing over our defeat to Fulham, the lads are back in action this weekend as we make a long trip to the South Coast to take on Bournemouth. And of course, the Premier League and TV companies have always got the fans as their priority. So tomorrow's kickoff is a sensible time at 12:30, which makes it pretty much impossible for Sunderland fans to leave and get there on the same day by any other means than car, and even then it's touch and go, I think. But my hats go off to all of those who are travelling down. Of course, they'll probably be listening to this the day before, actually, as they're travelling down. But of course, Sunderland are looking to halt a run of 3 successive defeats, while Bournemouth are looking to extend a run of 7 without a loss. So, to talk all things Bournemouth ahead of the game, we're very lucky to have the company of Alexander Smith from the Bournemouth Daily Echo. Hello, Alexander.
Hi, Chris. Thanks very much for having me on.
Yeah, how's it going?
Yeah, not too bad. Busy. Looking forward to the weekend after not a particularly dramatic game at West Ham last weekend.
Well, anything's dramatic for West Ham at the moment, and anytime they've got a sniff of a win, it gets dramatic there. But just on the starting off with the early kickoff there, 12:30 kickoff. I mean, I don't know what your feelings are of early kickoffs, but we've had a few conversations because we've had a couple lately, and they always just seem a bit flat.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a weird one. I mean, I know, particularly with the travel distance for Sunderland, it's not ideal. We had Newcastle away was a 12:30 last season for us, and may well be again because that game seems to produce a lot of goals and good games. So I think that's in April, so they may well choose to move that to some time, as you say, that's perfect for the travelling fans. But yeah, it's been an interesting one. I think certainly with the run that Cherries are on, hopefully it'll be a bouncing Dean Court and can extend that to 8 games. But I'm sure Sunderland will want to not make that happen.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I mean, obviously, because Bournemouth fans are in the same boat as Sunderland fans, we're going either way. But it is strange that, for games so far away, like the whole length of the country, they put them at the worst possible kickoff times. Do you think they're actually trying to help people by doing this?
Well, I was speaking to someone in the media room at West Ham actually, who'd done a piece having spoken to the people at Sky and TNT about things, and like they'd said, oh, we do try and think about these things, and then the article went up, and literally on that day they confirmed the TV picks for March, which saw Manchester United travel to Bournemouth on a Friday night, and it was sort of just like one of those where it's just like, well, there's literally no public transport available for Manchester United fans to go back to Manchester on that day if they're going to watch the whole 90 minutes. So it's as much as they claim to think about these things, how the actual TV picks that they choose perhaps sometimes suggest otherwise.
Yeah, well, it was the same for this one. I'm pretty sure one of the lads put in the chat was trying to look to get down, and it was just impossible unless you went the day before. So maybe it was decided by the Bournemouth tourist boards to get people there on the Friday, I don't know, and spend a night in Bournemouth. But I mentioned that you cover Bournemouth for the Bournemouth Daily Echo, of course. So how long have you been covering Bournemouth now?
So this is my second full season. So did last season, and this season it's been two pretty good seasons so far. Yeah, it's going well, and I think hopefully it'll be another record breaker this season.
Yeah. Is it the dream job? I mean, did you grow up a Bournemouth fan and now you're covering them? Is this the dream?
I didn't, but I've lived in Bournemouth for 8 odd years, so been in the area for quite a while. So they then sort of became the local, and I worked on the news team at the paper first, and then transitioned over to sport for the start of last season, and yeah, it's pretty good getting paid to cover Premier League football. You can't really complain.
Well, that's it. I mean, just talking about Premier League football there, because actually, obviously covering Bournemouth last couple of seasons, but imagine if there's any kind of older journalists who are still knocking about or maybe retired, they might be a little bit jealous of people like yourself when they followed Bournemouth around to all those places in the lower leagues, because it's some time to be a Bournemouth fan and a journalist who covers them, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's one of my predecessors now works for the club, and he covered the club for years and years and years, and through all the leagues and into the Premier League for the first time. So certainly he's he's Neil Parrott is the font of all knowledge for Cherries, I think. So yeah, it's certainly well, yeah, I'm sure if you told Cherries fans a decade ago that this is where they'd be and how long they'd have been up here, they would have been shocked. But it is, and they're a good side, good Premier League side, well established and looking up, certainly.
Yeah. Well, it's so strange to think it's only kind of 15 years ago or so, and I'm old enough where 15 years ago isn't all that long ago, to be honest. But yeah, it's only about 15 years ago they were bouncing around League One and League Two. So, and a lot of people forget that because it's been some journey, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. From sort of the survival as a club to the race up the leagues from League Two under Eddie Howe and all of that rise. It's I mean, obviously meteoric is a good word, and fairy tale gets bandied around as well, and I think it genuinely is one of those in the football world for a club to go from where it was and the financial difficulties that it had in the 90s and the noughties to go from that to being an established Premier League club is brilliant.
Yeah. Does Eddie Howe still get a good reception when he travels down with Newcastle?
Yeah, I mean he's a club legend, obviously for what he did, playing for the club, local lad, and then going on to manage the team and to such success to the Premier League. I mean, I think it'll be. I don't think there'll ever be a day when he doesn't get a good reception at Dean Court.
Yeah, I'm not surprised kicking all that off, but yeah, we talked about it being some rise, especially to start with, because that jump from League Two to the Premier League was just 5 years in the first instance. But now you're looking at a club that have been in the top flight for 9 out of the last 11 seasons. Now, if we purely look off the field, I mean, how have Bournemouth managed to keep up with that progress? Because as bigger clubs have found out, it's not easy to consolidate in the Premier League, is it?
Yeah, I think they've they some well positioned investment went well. Obviously, with the new owners taking over in December 2022, there's been a lot of investment since they've come in, both on and off the pitch. So a brand new training ground opened last season in April time. That's sort of one of, I mean, state of the art, and they're still expanding that, and is probably one of the league's best as brand new, and a big fantastic facility. So that sort of stuff has helped investment in that, investment in the players. They've spent a lot, but they've also invested well, and managed to get returns on an awful lot of players, and some big fees for players departing. So they've managed to sort of work that quite well, and make the most of their assets while they've had them, and then they've produced on the pitch, and then got a big money move away. I think obviously the question for clubs like that in this sort of part of the table is, at what point do you start consolidating and trying to keep hold of players rather than selling them for these big fees, and hoping that they stick around for another couple of seasons to try and push up a little bit, or are you sort of looking at financial models and things and going, well, we don't have much choice if we're going to stay within the rules. We have to sell some of these players. So that's a delicate balancing act, and I think that's one that they're trying to balance at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, talking about the plans off the pitch, I was reading some of your stuff that over the last couple of days, and saw quite big plans to extend the stadium that are looking to kick off in the summer. And I know these talks have been going on for a long time, trying to get planning permission and all that sort of stuff from local councils. But it finally starts looking like it's going to get started soon.
Yeah, I think it's been one of those things that's always been touted while they've been in the Premier League about how they can go about expanding the ground. But obviously, under the new owner, he's come in and he's seems to be bankrolling it, and they've had the first part of the planning applications, because the planning application is going to be split in two. So there was the enabling works, which is the first bit for some foundations, broadcast compound, perimeter fence, that sort of stuff. That's going to be has been approved, and work is getting cracking on that. Things are moving on that side of things, and the second part of the application, which is the main bit really, for all the expansion, is currently with the council, and should hopefully be decided in the next few months. I think they're anticipating beginning of May. They were hoping to have the whole new south stand in for the start of next season. But now they've sort of pushed that back a little bit, and they've said only the front tier will be ready for that, for the start of next term. But that at least, obviously planning subject to planning. But they're hopeful, and they're optimistic that that'll get going, and it'll be hopefully just over 20,000 capacity once it's all done, which will no longer be the smallest in the league if Brentford continue in the Premier League as well.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. How the rest of the season plays out, see who comes up as well. But yeah, I mean, just in terms of the fans feeling about that, because look, Bournemouth has a certain feel about it. Bournemouth is a I would say a certain type of club. You know, it almost has that closeness about it because they've had this journey. They've had, with a 10,000 stadium capacity. So are the fans quite excited about it, or do they want it done in the right way? Because it could potentially kind of change how they feel about the club, couldn't it?
Yeah, I think they're keen to have it done the right way. I think a big part of that was quite a lot of them were happy that they're staying where they are, because there was sort of discussions about whether it would be a new stadium elsewhere, or whether they'd redevelop the ground. They announced last April, I think it was, that they'd bought back the stadium that they'd originally sold to a property company when they were in financial difficulties, and then was paying rent on that. So they finally bought that back, which was a big step, and that was, and lots of fans were obviously thrilled with that. But I think it's just a case of trying to maintain that sort of closeness in terms of the stadium being on top of the pitch, and that sort of feel around the stadium as well. And also they want to make sure that things are done the right way. There's been a bit of criticism of the club in the last day or so, just because the club have decided that this summer they're going to introduce more hospitality seats, which they've managed to sort of get done for the start next season, or will manage to get done for the start of next season. But without having the full South Stand, it means that people are going to have to relocate without from seats that they might have been in for 25 years. So that's a bit of frustration from some fans, obviously, around that and the way that's been handled. But hopefully things will progress and sort of we'll be sat here in 18 months' time or 2 years' time with a fully built new stadium that's been expanded and everyone's happy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, going back the last few seasons in the Premier League, look, that first season they were up Scott Park and Gary O'Neill shared it. That first season back in the Premier League, it was touch and go. Well, it looked like Bournemouth might drop that season, but they ended up staying up. That summer, they went off to Spain and appointed Andoni Iraola, who had been, I think he'd been linked with Leeds before that. But was there a bit, a kind of, who's this fella coming in? Everyone kind of getting on Google and Wikipedia and trying to look him up?
Yeah, I think, well, firstly, there was a bit of shock that Gary O'Neill got sacked, having kept the club in the Premier League and sort of keeps them in the league, and then sort of thank you very much. And he was sacked. But yeah, I think the new owners came in midway through that season, so I think they wanted to, I guess, put their stamp on it, and they brought in someone who was going to play the sort of style of football that they wanted to play, and a young sort of upcoming manager who'd impressed with, I guess, clubs of similar size to Cherries in Spain. So he'd done really well with Mirandes and Rayo Vallecano. They got them both to semi-finals of the Copa del Rey and sort of punched above his weight with them. So I think they were keen to bring him in, and there was a bit of there were a lot of questions, I think, when that appointment was made, and when they didn't win in their first nine games or so, those questions continued. But then, once I think it was Burnley, the first win for Iraola, and then after that went on a brilliant run of form and were 10th at Christmas, I think it was, and then sort of never really looked back from that point.
Well, that's it. I mean, 12th in the table in his first season, 9th last season, which I think equalled Bournemouth's best ever finish in the Premier League. There was also an FA Cup quarter-final appearance against Manchester City. I mean, from the outside, it looks like he's doing a fantastic job. But you've been around the place, obviously, press conferences and speaking to him potentially and all that. I mean, what kind of manager is he? Is he quite animated? Is he quite calm? I mean, what kind of fella is he?
He's very animated on the touchline, and you've got a lot of energy on the touchline, and is very enthusiastic and engaged, and sometimes quite frustrated when things he perceives to go against them. But he's pretty calm in press conferences, certainly, and measured, and he's a intelligent guy with his answers, and gives good considered answers to us as well. During press conferences, he's quite good at not giving too much away, but he's certainly he's honest, I think, with everything that he says. Just sometimes it's sort of not necessarily the question that was asked, but he is always very honest with us, and he's good with us, and it's not a massive press pack down at Bournemouth, so he sees the same faces most weeks, and I guess that also helps.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, last season, fantastic. Equaling the best ever finish in the Premier League, quarter-final of the Cup. But then in the summer, they took in around, I made it. It might be more than that, but around 300 million at the very least, I think, in player sales. Some big players left, and I think if everyone's honest, I think the football world thought that the wheels had come off at Bournemouth, and I thought this is the season they might go. But what was the fans' reaction to those player sales?
I think obviously they were pleased with the money that came in. There was certainly concern because sort of 4 of the 5 back 4 and goalkeeper that were sort of the mainstays from last season were departed the club in Kepa in goal, and then Kirkes, Zabani and Howson in the back 4. So there was certainly concern. I think they felt that the recruitment that was done was good, and replacements were signed, and they were happy with the placements, the replacements that came in, and the start of the season was brilliant. Like, started really well. Obviously, the first game of the season was away at Liverpool, and did lose 4-2, but gave a really good account of themselves and played well and had it at 2-2 in the closing stages before 2 late goals, and then after that a brilliant 9-game unbeaten run. So sort of everyone was going, "Oh, this is it. They're brilliant," and that it didn't matter. We didn't need those players. But a slightly less good run after that followed and sort of fell back down. So I think it's been, yeah, the summer was an interesting one. Lots of people were there were certainly questions about how they would perform without those players, but I think certainly internally they felt that they'd recruited well, and it was obviously proof is in the pudding, but they felt they'd done well, and they got some good early results to sort of allay any early fears that there might have been that was going to be a difficult season.
Yeah. Just about the current manager, I mean, how much reliance do you think the club have got on him? And I'm kind of asking in terms of the way Sunderland is structured, that we've got our director of football and all this, and I suppose the system is designed such that, you know, if the head coach leaves, you get someone else in, but everything else stays the same. I mean, have Bournemouth got that, or is there a big reliance on this manager?
I think they do have that. They have so Iraola has, or he tells us, very little input into transfers. So a lot of the transfer work is done by the director of, well, president of football operations, which is Tiago Pinto, and the technical director Simon Francis. So they do an awful lot of the sort of the transfer work and building the squad. So sort of within that sort of side of things, I guess the club has something in that, but I think a lot of the way they play is around Iraola. So I think if they were to lose Iraola, they'd certainly look to bring in a manager of sort of a similar vein, who plays similar football, because I think they've got a squad to do that, and a squad that knows what they're doing with that. But I think Iraola is a big part of it, and so it'd be a tough one to replace him.
Yeah. Well, just before we get on to this season, the last question on him is there a worry that actually he might get a tempting offer elsewhere? Because if you look at his record last few seasons, you look at Thomas Frank as well last summer, is there a worry that sort of thing might happen?
Yeah. I mean, obviously he's out of contract in the summer, so there's concern that he won't renew. But he has shown in previous years that if he has a contract, he sticks to it. So he's been very good at that side of things, showing a bit of loyalty to the clubs that hire him. But I know obviously he said to us in Spain they work off a sort of a 1-year contract, so he's used to, when he was managing in Spain, that he'd have a year's deal. They'd get to the end of the season and then decide whether he'd renew or not. So he's quite relaxed about it. Fans and the media are less so. But yeah, I think he will. There'll certainly be suitors for him, and he's got his stock is rising and continues to rise the more he impresses here. So I think it'll be the summer will be an interesting one if he hasn't renewed. But I do think we probably will hear either way, but before then. So hopefully it'll be here that he's renewed and he'll be around for next season.
Yeah, that'll be interesting potentially with him and Marco Silva in the market if he leaves Fulham as well, because that's a similar situation there. But before we get on to Bournemouth's season so far, I think it's time to take a quick break. So we'll be back very soon. And welcome back to How We're the podcast. And we're just about to get into Bournemouth's season so far, because looking at the season, I mean, it's pretty clear. I think you might have touched on it earlier. It's been a season of 3 parts. lost 1 in the first 9, then no wins for 11, now no defeats in 7. Is there something to explain the extended runs either way?
I asked Iraola that last week, and he basically went, "Well, you can look at it and go different. There are different reasons for the different runs, whether that's injuries or whether that's sort of difficult runs of fixtures and things like that." And but like he looks at sort of a half season block and looks at sees how many points he gets and that sort of and goes by that. And he didn't really say there was one reason or not, but it has been a theme of his time at Cherry. Certainly last season there was an 11 game unbeaten run right in the middle of it as well. So yeah, it's a bit of a theme. But yeah, it was. I think the they were they were they were really good in that first sort of block of fixtures. But it was one of those where you did have um, sort of the 50-50 thing sort of fell their way as well, which helped them over the line at times, I think. And then in that second block where they didn't pick up the results, maybe those sort of 50-50 things went against them. Um, that poor run is not to say that there weren't good performances. Like they played really well at Man U in that 4-4 draw that was ridiculous. And like the second half against West Ham, for instance, that was a brilliant half of football. They played really, really well. But that was only good enough for a point, and they drew 2-2. So there've been a lot of draws this season. But I think recently that this past run they've been improving. And I think encouragingly going into the end of the season, the Everton win, they weren't at their best. They weren't at their best in that game, which is always in sort of slightly encouraging when you're still picking up results when you're not playing so well. That's sort of been an encouraging sign, I guess, because you're sort of getting to this point of the season, getting towards 10 games to go, where you're sort of like actually performances aren't as important now. It's just about picking up points and getting results. So if they can have a few more like that, then that'd be great.
Yeah, Sunderland were lucky enough to get you at home during that bad run during that 11. But actually, just looking at that run in the middle, I mean, did it get a bit nervy during that run of 11 without a win? Because, I mean, it lasted, looking at it, from the beginning of November until the new year.
Yeah.
And Bournemouth did drop like a stone down the table. I mean, were questions being asked?
Yeah, there weren't sort of any questions of sackings or anything. There wasn't anything quite like that. But certainly there were concerns and questions about where sort of the turnaround in form was going to come from. They concede a lot of goals. They score a lot of goals, but they concede a lot of goals as well. So there was concern certainly defensively about how they were going to sort of rectify that. Particularly set pieces, they struggle with defending set pieces because they're not a very tall team. They're sort of one of the shortest in the league, I think. So there was definitely concern around that side of things. I think once they got the first win again, with Semenyo's sort of farewell goal, that sort of felt like it's just a bit massive relief apart from anything else, and felt like a weight had lifted off a bit. And then obviously lost to Arsenal, I think, the week after that. But then since then have been brilliant and beaten Liverpool, good points elsewhere, and good wins. The Everton one was a good win. Obviously beat Wolves. They possibly weren't at their best at Wolves, but Wolves just looked pretty toothless going forward and missed a number of good chances. And Bournemouth were pretty clinical actually. And Krupke scored an excellent goal, and Alex Scott scored a good goal to confirm that win. So they've sort of done what they needed to in that run since, and performances have picked up definitely. And there certainly seems like there's more energy around the team, and they feel much more confident and in a good run.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask kind of what changed to get them out of it. From what you're saying there, a lot of it might have just been psychological about in terms of that confidence rather than any tactical shift, or actually just looking at it, it might have just been the fact that you had Spurs at home which I think has helped a lot of sides break some bad runs this season. But was there any tactical shift, or was it all just they got that win and they were off again?
No, there wasn't any massive tactical shifts. I don't think. Iraola likes to play the way he plays, and I think he said previously that he felt that the Brentford defeat, which was a poor performance, that was a really bad game and result for Bournemouth losing 4-1 there. He felt that that was something of a turning point and something of a wake up call. And has said that he certainly felt something change around the group after that. So whether that was sort of a bit of like I say, a wake up call for them to go, right, that was rubbish. We can't do that again. And then I think they drew at Chelsea after that, which was a much better performance, and then lost to Arsenal. Sorry, I got Arsenal and Spurs the wrong way around, but lost to Arsenal, but played well as well. Crucially, run them close. And then got the win again against Spurs.
Yeah, yeah. Well, actually, you mentioned Semenyo because the strange thing is, obviously, it was a big thing. There was rumours going on for weeks before he left, but he did leave in January finally to Manchester City. But bizarrely, that's kind of when the results started to pick up. It suggests Bournemouth aren't really missing them. I mean, is that the case?
Yeah, well, I mean, results certainly suggest so. I mean, obviously, it was a big part of the team, and they ideally would want him to still be at the club, but I think um, they've done well without him so far. They've sort of reinvested the money they got from him into Ryan and Alex Tort. So sort of bought two players in with the cash, and I think with a bit left over as well. So they've sort of reinvested the funds, and they're playing well. And Ryan's really hit the ground running as a 19-year-old in Brazil playing his first minutes in the Premier League. He's certainly caught the eye and looks a real threat and I won't say a real find because he was playing sort of top division football in Brazil and playing really well for Vasco da Gama, who are a big club there. So it's not like they've plucked him out of obscurity, because they really haven't. They've signed someone who's again, maybe it's a market that Premier League clubs maybe don't venture into as much as they should do. But Brazilian football is obviously brilliant, and so they've picked up one of Brazil's top prospects for not loads of money, and relatively speaking, and he looks to be a really good player.
Yeah, well, I mean, looking at this run of 7 games, as we've said, I mean, 4 of them have been away, and actually the 4 wins in those 7 are spread equally between playing home and away. But how impressive has it been? Because, we talked already about a win against Liverpool, draw against Villa as well, which is a good result. But you've also mentioned a couple of games. I think you said, going from memory here, Wolves, where they maybe didn't play so well, Everton, where they didn't play so well. So is it just the fact that they've got this momentum now and they're coming on the right end of results rather than the blown sides away?
I think so. I think don't get me wrong, there've been some really, really excellent performances, and they have played really well in the main across this run. It has been an excellent run of form, and it's not just they've managed to just scrape over the line in all of them. They have been playing really well. But yeah, I think it is one of those. In football, every season you get it. Like, you'll have a run where you think, how have we only picked up 2 points from those 5 games? Because we dominated in 3 of them and lost to a last minute penalty or something like that. And these things always happen. But then you also get the flip side where you're like, well, we've got 9 points from those 4 games and we haven't played particularly well. So I don't think it's quite that case. They just maybe haven't hit their straps for like the full 90 minutes in a couple of them. I think Iraola sort of said the first half of the Everton game they weren't quite as good as he would have liked, but they were better after the second half, better after half time, and had that sort of brief spell where they scored twice in quick succession to go from 1-0 down to 2-1 up, and then weirdly, and then played Everton got a red card, and then Everton seemed to dominate after getting the red card. They didn't manage that period particularly well, which Iraola said, but they managed to sort of see out the win and get the 3 points. So that side of things has been encouraging. But yeah, they have had some excellent performances as well. That Liverpool performance was was top. First half in particular was excellent, and conceded from 2 set pieces, which has been a problem, like I've already mentioned. But to show the sort of the tenacity and the mentality to concede fairly late on for that equaliser to then go and score a set piece of their own from a James Hill long throw right at the death was brilliant and a great moment.
Yeah, you made a couple of statements in there that work for Sunderland season as well. I mean, it's just the Premier League's a bit like that this season. But just going into the home form a bit more, just 2 defeats in 13 so far. And I noticed as well, only Man City, Arsenal have lost fewer games. I mean, that's impressive when you read it out on paper, but have they made it a bit of a fortress? I mean, have they got a good way of setting up at home?
Yeah, I think it was something that Iraola sort of said before the season as well, that last season they had the same number of points away as they did at home. And while that wasn't an issue per se, I think Iraola was sort of saying what's maybe a bit of an outlier, because generally you perform better at home and you will get more returns at home. So I think he was sort of looking at it a bit and going, well, we could get more returns from playing at home. So that was certainly the aim, and I think they've managed to do that. Like you say, only two defeats to Arsenal and to Everton. The Everton one wasn't a great performance. That was in the midst of the run, and they they just didn't really they didn't really take their chances, and then I think Grealish scored fairly late on to sort of claim the points for Everton. So that was a frustrating result, but I think other than that they've been pretty good at home. Off the top of my head, the Burnley result wasn't the best, where they were 1-0 up, and again in that run 1-0 up, and then conceded a late equaliser. That wasn't great, but in the main they've been pretty good at home in front of the home fans.
Yeah. And just defensively, I mean, only the top 3 and Sunderland, I might add, actually, have conceded fewer goals at home, which, to be fair, I'm quite worried about because, of course, Sunderland have only scored 6 in 13 games away from home this season. But it does suggest, annoyingly for Sunderland fans, I think, in the build-up, that Bournemouth are well organised and don't give much away at home.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's such games involving Bournemouth have been so high scoring this year, this season. I think they're fairly certain they're at the top for goals scored in games, whether that's for or against. I think they've had 40 odd for and 40 odd against as well. I think goal difference of -2 at the moment, but defence has certainly improved recently as well. In the last run, which was, like I say, a bit of an issue, that they're conceding too many goals in that difficult run that really didn't help them. But I think they've been much more solid recently. I think they've got a bit more of a settled back four as well, which has helped. So Truefair at left back, and then Senesi and James Hill at centre back, and then Alex Jimenez at right back has been a fairly settled back four, which I think has helped them, and also potentially helped Georgia Petrovic in goal as well to have a bit more confidence with it, and they're feeling, I think, certainly feeling much more confident defensively. Set pieces have been probably the biggest issue, but they're sort of hopefully have turned a corner on that front, and will be hopefully hoping to keep Sunderland out on Saturday.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just thinking about Sunderland and kind of comparing it a little bit, because, you know, at Sunderland, at some point this season, it kind of kicked in where we started to feel a little bit of expectations with the results when we were riding high in the table. And obviously with this 7-game unbeaten run that Bournemouth are on, and if you look at the games, Bournemouth have got, of course, starting with Sunderland, that's followed by Brentford at home and Burnley away. I mean, is there going to be plenty of expectation from the Bournemouth fans? And you look at 9th last season and currently 8th this season. I mean, is that expectation building up, and that almost Bournemouth fans are now going to be coming to the likes of this game against Sunderland and the Brentford game, potentially going away to Burnley, and expecting that Bournemouth pick up those 3 points? And is there some added pressure that comes with that?
I think so. I think the Brentford game, they have such a bad record against Brentford that maybe fans won't be turning up with an expectation against that one. Just because Iraola always seems to lose against Brentford, but hopefully that changes next Tuesday. Yeah, I think so, and I think obviously they want to keep picking up points and then sort of will assess where they are, but certainly you if they get the results that maybe in inverted commas they should or could get, then come the end of March you could be looking at like a really the last couple of months you're thinking this is on here. Um, so yeah, it's looking at that, and I think some like last season they were sort of in and around it in the new year. Like their unbeaten run, 11-game unbeaten run was sort of December, January time. And then they were sort of looking at even top 4 at that point, and people singing about Champions League. But then they sort of dropped points where perhaps they shouldn't have done in certain games. Lost to the likes of they lost to Ipswich at home, which wasn't a good result. I think lost to Everton at home as well, which was when Everton were sort of fighting too. So they sort of dropped points against teams that maybe they should have beaten in the context of the season. So I think hopefully they'll be thinking, well, if we can win the games that we should, in inverted commas, win, then it's looking good for us. But obviously, it's easier said than done. And obviously that starts on Saturday with Sunderland.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned set pieces, but otherwise, other than set pieces, what's the best way to get at this Bournemouth side and getting a result? I mean, what should Sunderland look to be doing?
Well, I think sometimes teams that have maybe sat a bit deeper have had a bit more joy against Bournemouth, because sometimes they can sort of struggle a little bit to break down low blocks. It's not all the time. They do manage, they get results against teams with low blocks. But sometimes, like Iraola sort of said about them needing a bit of chaos and a bit of energy and a bit of sort of a lot of transition as well in the game, that sort of helps them. So like West Ham for 60 minutes, there was very little for either side, and then sort of in the last half an hour when people got a bit leggy and a bit of tiredness settled in, that then they had a few more chances on transition. So they'll sort of be hoping to play that sort of game. Again, like I say, that's not to say that they can't break down a low block. Just in the past, some teams have found success in doing that. But yeah, I think obviously the game at Sunderland was an interesting one, to say the least. I think off the top of my head, like obviously the first 15 minutes couldn't have gone much better for Bournemouth.
Yeah.
I think I remember sitting there and thinking, well, I don't think it's been that one-sided, but Bournemouth are 2-0 up, and they've sort of managed to get this lead without necessarily playing like a team that's 2-0 up inside 15 minutes. But then the thing that really cost them was sort of discipline, and they weren't quite on it on that side of front, and allowed Sunderland to get a foothold in the game, and once that sort of happened, it sort of snowballed a little bit, and sort of I think there was the penalty to get it to 2-1, and then sort of at half time you go, right, okay, Sunderland maybe in the ascendancy a bit, let's just sort of maybe shut up shop a little bit and try and make sure that we keep it at 2-1 until the hour mark or something like that. But I think that the equaliser was the first minute after the resumption, and then from there it was a game that you look at it and go, well, only Sunderland are winning this. Other than the disallowed goal that Cherries had pretty much, I think, straight after the equaliser, that Evan Nilsson was offside for. I think it was one of those games. So they can, that has happened maybe a couple of times where they haven't quite done what they needed to in terms of game management. I think that Burnley draw was another example of that, where they went 1-0 up, but they didn't capitalise on that and weren't able to like cement their position in the game and do enough to get the 3 points. And when Burnley equalised, it was sort of it wasn't it wasn't an inevitability, but they didn't do enough to make sure that they were clear and that wasn't going to happen, if you know what I mean. So that can be something that teams can do.
Yeah. Well, taking that into account, and this is not asking for a prediction, but how do you see the actual game itself playing out? I mean, should Sunderland fans who are travelling down, should they expect an afternoon where Sunderland are defending on the edge of the box? I mean, is that how Bournemouth do it? Do they keep possession and pin teams in?
I think it'd be a good game, because obviously, like you sort of say, Sunderland with the form that they're in will be looking for a bit of a reaction and trying to get back to winning ways. I think that Bournemouth, sometimes they can sort of have quite a bit of possession. I think they had the majority of possession at West Ham. I'll just check that. But I think they had saw a lot of the ball, but maybe didn't do enough with it. They had best part 60% at West Ham. So they can play with the ball, but sort of like I say, they create their best chances on sort of transition and in fast attacks, either from deep or they press really high. So Evan Nilsson as a number 9, I think many neutrals might look at him and see his goal return and go, well, that's not the best for a number 9, but he does bring an awful lot to the team, and his sort of off the ball work and his pressing is actually pretty vitally important from that number 9 position, and a lot of stuff that they do comes from that. So they have players pushing high and trying to win the ball up in the final third and get teams backtracking when they've just lost the ball like deep. So they create stuff like that, and they like to create chances. And again, it's one that Iraola said that they're more of a volume team, so they sort of hope to create 15 odd chances and have 15 odd shots on goal or more in a game, and hope that they score 2 or 3, rather than having 5 and hoping that they'll be really, really clinical when that happens, and relying on being clinical because they try and create an awful lot.
Yeah, should be interesting. I assume you're planning on being there, and you're looking forward to it, even though it is an early kickoff.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there in probably my usual seat in the press box, and I'm looking forward to it. I enjoyed the first bit of the Sunderland game at Stadium of Light. Was thankful for the press box being right at the back because it was hammering it down. So that was quite good. But yeah, I think Sunderland are a good team, so I think it should be a good game, I think.
Yep, should be an interesting one, especially with the way the game went at the Stadium. It could have went either way, and I'm sure this one will be the same. But it just leaves me to say, Alexander, I hope you enjoy your weekend, because you can get your weekend started early with the early kickoff, of course. But just leaves me to say thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Good stuff. And thanks again, everyone, for listening. Don't forget, we'll have immediate reaction after the final whistle with the pod. That should drop very soon after. And I think, we'll be trying to get on, obviously, middle of the afternoon on the Saturday. So watch for that drop. And we'll also have all the reaction on the Local Report website. So look out for all of that as well. But from us, it's bye for now.